Welcome back. We're kicking off episode number 5. I can't believe we are already hitting this milestone for me. Our next guest is a very special guest. He's a close friend. He is my ride or die friend. Anything that I'm doing that's crazy, I just say, "Hey, you ready?" And he's like, "Yeah, who's driving?" And usually I drive and he sleeps the whole way. But he's been on almost every adventure with me but one. He is one of the few friends that I have that I haven't met at Guadalupe Mountains. We actually met at a climbing gym. But as I've discussed before, my Mount Rushmore of friends, he is the last, I guess you would say, bust, they would call it. On my Mount Rushmore, we had Lori. You got to include her because she kicked off this love of hiking with me even though she doesn't hike a whole lot with me anymore. We had John, we had Sam, who both I met at Guadalupe Mountains. And now we have our special guest who finishing up my Mount Rushmore. And you know how we do it. If you want to find out who it is, you got to stick around. Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jason. And today I am not going solo, thank goodness. That was very difficult for me to do. We have a very special guest. As I said in the intro, he's my ride and die. So anything crazy that I can come up with, all I have to do is say, "You ready?" And he's like, "Who's driving?" And as I've already stated, I usually have to drive, and he sleeps the whole way. My very good friend, Henning, welcome to the podcast.
Howdy, glad to be here.
I was talking to my team about the podcast episode far, and it was funny. I never thought about it, but someone made the statement that, man, you meet a lot of people on that trail in Guadalupe Mountains. And I started laughing. I'm like, yeah, like out of all my guests, except for Lori, I've met at Guadalupe Mountains. What's funny is none of them are from Texas. So John was from Washington, Sam was from New Mexico. So I never thought about it. But on my Mount Rushmore of friends, you're there. You are the final piece, not of importance. You all are important to me, but I did not meet you at Guadalupe Mountains. I met at our local rock climbing gym, and I don't even really remember how we started talking, probably because I was slaying the wall and you were just like, "Oh my God, you got to get to know this guy because he's like destroying these boulders." But I do remember it was upstairs and we just, I mean, you can, jump in whenever you want, but like, I just remember us talking about kind of climbing and then somehow I believe I mentioned something about hiking, and then like our friendship just kind of blossomed from there.
Yeah, we were upstairs in the bouldering area, and you came up, and you you started talking to me, which is slightly unusual at the gym. Every once in a while it happens, but
You're like, dang,
yeah,
this guy's hitting on me.
I was like, "Dang, this dude talks a lot." That was my first thought was damn, he's gonna talk my ear off. Not in a bad way though. Actually, it was actually welcomed. I remember that at the time because a lot of times I go to the gym and I'll sit there and I would boulder and take breaks and boulder and take breaks and you'd have like 20 people walk by you, sit by you, do this, and you don't say a word to them.
No.
And so there was many times I went to the gym and I was like, man, why didn't anyone talk to anyone? I would try to talk to someone, and but anyway, so you started talking to me. I was like, yeah, this guy talks a lot. That's actually a good thing. Yeah, we started talking about climbing, and then I don't remember the details, but you started talking about hiking.
No.
And at that point, I was like, yeah, I hike a lot, or used to hike a lot. And
No. No, it's funny when I describe our friendship, I'm like, if there's could be a bro yin and yang, Henning is my yin because like I do talk a lot. you're kind of a quiet person, so I always make that joke. But so kind of just thinking about hiking and backpacking, and for you, how far does it go back? Because I do you do have a love, and that's one thing that I really caught on quickly, that you do have a love for the outdoors, and if you can kind of just think back, like, how did that kind of, how far back does it go, and how did it start for you?
Um, kind of really appreciating the outdoors goes back. Man, I've always liked being outdoors. I used to always play outside and catch snakes and frogs and all sorts of stuff around here when I was little. But getting into hiking, getting in the real stuff doesn't really go back that far, or maybe it does now. I'm getting kind of old,
Yeah.
but it goes back to more or less when I was in the military. Before that, I wanted to get out more, but I didn't have much opportunity for it, except for local stuff. But I loved camping. Like I always, like any chance I got, I just really enjoyed it. I always really wanted to take it farther too. I remember
Mm-hmm.
growing up, I had a friend that was in Boy Scouts and stuff, and he was talking about this thing he was doing. He was getting ready for, it, and he was so scared. And I was just like, because it was like a 40-mile hike, and he was young. He
Yeah.
was only like, yeah, he was, man, maybe I can't remember how old he was, but it was a big hike for the age he was. But I was so I wanted to go so bad. I remember, and but yeah, for me finally being able to get to do that was whenever I was in the military, and yeah, I signed up to basically carry bags long distances on my back. I wanted to be boots on the ground, I wanted to be sneaking through the jungle and all that. So that's what I
Yeah.
made sure I did.
I can honestly say you're one of the few people that I've met that loves a heavy base weight, that is not scared by the weight. So basically, it really kind of kicked off your love for hiking and backpacking was through the military. And I was going to say that at the very beginning of the episode, but for sure, thank you for your service.
That. I appreciate that.
Hmm. And so now, do you find yourself when you're hiking and backpacking? Is it mainly with family, friends, solo? Who's accompanying you when you're out?
Uh, Generally, lately, historically, mainly friends.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's usually either friends or solo.
Hmm.
Not a ton of solo like adventures, but more like I used to go hiking a lot, just with my dog,
Yeah.
and he was that dog was my outdoor buddy, and we did tons and tons of hikes, long hikes. But now my dogs are not hiking dogs, so it's generally you and because you go hiking so much, it's kind of convenient that I can just like hitch along.
No. So, kind of taking that a step forward, what does hiking and backpacking mean to you? So, like, you talk to people, and some people use it for exercise, some people use it to kind of clear their mind. I know for me, I'm 51, and I have to have a challenge. And like, so, getting outdoors, and like, you and I have done, and we'll get into later in the podcast, tons and tons of epic stuff. But I always have to have some kind of goal, and it usually tends to revolve around hiking and backpacking, but building up towards a trip, mileage for a day, something. So, what does it kind of do for you?
To me, it's kind of all of the above. Like
Yeah,
it's a pretty supreme activity. It's good exercise, just in general. Like
yeah,
walking, is good exercise. I try to walk a lot. I'm fairly athletic, do a lot of things. I play soccer, I climb, and all this stuff. But to me, walking is like the activity I intend to do, like until that's probably the last thing I'm going to be able to do. So I
Yeah.
try to walk as good as I can. Sounds weird to say it that way, but yeah, I like walking. To and it's really, I mean, it's extremely good for your longevity to walk. It's like one
Yeah.
of the best things you can do. So then why not just? I mean, I like to walk around the neighborhood. That's fine. But whenever you can walk through an epic environment, you're surrounded by nature. There's tons of stuff. Like if you're just quiet and you just look around you, it's pretty experiential. Like you can see all sorts of wildlife. You kind of soak in everything that's happening around you. And to me, that kind of goes into the mind clearing thing, which is hiking is extremely meditative to me.
Yeah.
And I think you notice when we hike, I'll tend to like drop back and I'll be really quiet for a while. I just like to get into that mode of like maybe it's something about the rhythm of
Yeah.
walking and then just being in that environment. But I tend to just yeah, my brain goes all sorts of places. And it's really like to me one thing hiking in especially in like big environments, and by big environments I just mean like Guadalupe Mountains, you can say like it's special. And like Big Ben, whenever you're looking at the giant views, they're very special. There've been places in, I know it's about Texas and stuff, but places in California
Yeah.
and and Hawaii and all that, and it's just like it's it's kind of amazing. And to me, I feel small. It helps me feel very humble and like put my life into perspective. And I almost always have like a moment hiking every trip, um,
Yeah.
especially like something like Rainier, where it's really difficult. Sometimes in the difficulty, it's like, why am I here? This sucks, and I'm just putting myself through all this pain
Type
and
2 fun.
yeah, it's type 2 fun, but also in the misery, I always find I juxtapose that against my life and all the things I would rather be doing than being in pain away from
Mhm.
out in wherever I am where it's cold and I'm not very comfortable. I'm like, I could be doing this, and I think of all the things I'm not, all the people and animals and all that I'm not with, and it gives me a huge appreciation for them. And I hardly ever like finish a hike with having had dry eyes the whole time because I'll just like sink into these really really deep meaningful kind of thought patterns that I really think is important to kind of flesh out. And it's kind of hard to for your mind to wander there. It's kind of the type of stuff that maybe you pull your phone out to distract yourself from sinking
Yeah.
into all these things. But if you can't, if you don't have any distractions, all you're just trying to like not focus on the pain or fear or whatever, and then it all comes up, and then you can kind of work through it all.
Yeah, and I do that as well. As we're out there. I think this last trip it was 19 degrees for 2 nights, and I'm I have great gear, and so but it's still uncomfortable. And I'm like, man, I could be at home, you know, chilling. Lori and I could be watching whatever show she's into and just chilling. And I think also I can remember for sure coming back from trips and just having a renewed feeling towards the family, feeling towards her. I remember whenever I was through hiking the Lone Star Hiking Trail, I think it was like day 4, she came up and brought us Whataburger, and just like it was emotional because like just seeing her, like it just dawned on you how much that I've missed her. Um, but yeah, that's crazy that getting outdoors kind of just the renewal, I think, that it brings upon. And I noticed, like, you mentioned that hiking, sometimes you fall back. Usually when I'm hiking with you, you just leave me. And so when you're falling back, maybe I guess you're slowing down and I still don't catch you. So 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 when you say fall back, maybe you're being springing ahead because usually, and especially if it's elevation gain, I usually don't see you or Sam. And trust me, we will be talking about that later on in the podcast about a safety tip. All right. So, I think just over the years, and knowing you and talking to you, you've had some experiences in some of the national parks and state parks in Texas. What are your favorites?
I would definitely say my favorite is Guadalupe, um, which is Guadalupe Mountains National Park. It's it's got a lot there, and you have to put in the work, kind of, to
No,
see it all.
you have to earn it.
Yeah, but it's pretty special if you do. Big Ben, it's really cool. Obviously, that's why everyone loves it. But it's a little easier to kind of get out of the car and walk up to the what is it called, the window?
Yeah.
Yeah, the window, and like stuff like that. It was a really cool park though, super worth it.
Mm.
I actually wanted to do more in the basin between kind of the mountains and the Rio Grande.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot out there of trails and stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. Like for me, I like the national parks and state parks that I kind of consider the black sheep. So like you have Big Ben, who is probably one of the most popular. Well, it's the most popular national park in Texas, or you have Palo Duro, which I would argue is probably the most popular state park in Texas. And I'm like a fan of their evil stepbrother. So I'm, if you told me you were going to pay for the next 100 trips for me, it would be at Guadalupe Mountains, you know, probably 99% or 99 times. And then I may throw in a Cap Rock, and Cap Rock is kind of the step brother to Paladuro, and
Mhm.
I think for me, like, I don't like crowds, and um, I don't want to be in the back country experiencing what, we've experienced and then running into people. I like having it, or having the feeling that I have it all to myself, like Big Bend and Paladuro. Man, it's crazy with the amount of people that we've run into. So,
Yeah, I remember at Big Ben, I ran into several people on the trail, quite a few actually.
yeah.
I don't. I think we've run into two people at Guadalupe, or two groups,
Yeah.
and yeah, yeah, I like Caprock too. It's really cool. I mean, Texas has really cool parks. They're real nice. I mean, little ones too, like Lost Maples,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolutely gorgeous.
What was that one we went to that was spectacular? Probably the prettiest. It was Davis Mountain Preserve when we
Yeah,
did Baldy Peak.
yeah, I meant to mention that. Yeah, the Davis Mountain Preserve's really cool. A little limited, just the way they operate, but I like the way
Yeah.
they operate. That's really cool. Yeah, I want to go camping out there sometime.
So I was before I scheduled this podcast, and I had to talk you into it. I was joking. I started thinking like all my major accomplishments in like what I was talking about earlier, all having a challenge for myself, like you've been a part of, except for one, and like the El Capitan Peak, which we will do. But like like I wanted to do a 30-mile day, and you're like, all right, what time you picking me up? I wanted to all the 10 highest peaks in Texas. I wanted to all the named peaks in Guadalupe Mountains. I wanted to start hitting all the backcountry campsites. So like you've been a part of all these things, and yeah, and it just like I never thought about it before, and then I was like, oh gosh.
Hmm.
I think the only thing that I want to do, and I think you as well, is start outdoor climbing. And we have all the gear, so I'm sure that's going to be a challenge, and it's going to be something that we tackle here pretty soon. But if I just kind of go back, so before we get into Guadalupe, because that's a lot, our 30-mile day. So I've never hiked a 30-mile day. And, you know, to all the listeners, I think Henning is about 10 minutes north of me if I got on Highway 45, and then about 40 minutes north of him is the longest trail in Texas. So it's the Lone Star Hiking Trail. It's if you just hiked it straight through, the main trail, and it's 96.4 miles. And if you did all the loops, I think it's around 130, 128 miles. So I had the wonderful idea of, hey, I've never done a 30-mile day. I want to see what this is like. And so I think you've done some pretty long hikes with heavy backpacks, being in the military and stuff. And so, and, probably people that would have experienced a day like that would be like, nah, I'm out. But you were like very supportive, and yeah, we decided to do it. And we get to the Lone Star Hiking Trail. It's about 4 a.m. It's just smoky for some reason. The Lone Star Hiking Trails is through the Sam Houston National Forest, so they have controlled burns, and that's something this time of year. So we're in March, April, May. I don't know so much in May, but I do know in the spring and fall, I think, is when they schedule the controlled burns, and usually you need to check. Well, I didn't check. So we start heading out on this trail. It's smoky, and I remember you mentioning it like, man, can you smell that smoke? Like something's burning. So, it's pitch black dark. We're hiking, and I just remember going down the trail, and like off to our right, probably about, I don't know, 30 yards, there's a fire. And it was, the size of probably what somebody would do like a campfire. And so we're just kind of walking past this fire, and I'm looking at the fire, and I'm like, okay, people are camping, but I don't see any tents. And because I'm on this trail almost every weekend through hiking season, which is usually September 1st, the weekend after Labor Day, and then through probably the end of May. Like, so I know where all the primitive campsites are, and I'm like, there's no primitive campsite here. I go, so somebody's just kind of off trail, which is kind of odd. And so, we keep hiking, and then you call out and you go, look at that. And so like there's this fire in this pine tree, and it's probably, I don't know, 30 feet up in the air, and it's just exploding with sparks. And I'm like, what the heck? And then you shine your light down off the trail, and it's all black. Right down from us, there's like a tree stump that's on fire, and I'm like, holy crap, we're in the middle of a controlled burn. And so then it was the decision, like, do we keep pushing forward or we turn around? And you were like, kind of leaning towards turning around, just because then, we started breathing in all the smoke. And like me, I was just like, I just want to push through this part, because I wanted to get this accomplished. And I remember, us kind of still hiking forward and still like, okay, let's play it, let's see what happens in this next mile. And I remember the part of the trail that we were on, it's almost like you're on I guess like what I would think of like a delta. So like you're on this trail, and then like both sides kind of drop off, 5 or 6 feet. And then there's just water, and the water, it's not a lake or anything. It's just, that's where water collects. And I remember we rounded this corner, and I was like, man, it looked like the sun was coming up, and you could just see kind of like light off this water. And when we kind of got over this hill, that whole side of the trail was on fire. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, I think I should listen to Henning. But I think also around that time, the smoke started clearing, and we just kept going. And so what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that was pretty wild. I was not super stoked on breathing all that smoke, but it was kind of interesting because when we started, it was so dark. And it's dark whenever you start early morning in the forest like that. Like, it's pretty thick forest, so it tends to be like pitch black. And then I like to hike at night without a light on. So I think I was maybe like, oh, we shouldn't use lights. I don't remember. Or I might have been like walking without mine or something.
Yeah,
So,
you're always no lights, and then whenever you make me mad, I get back at you because I turn my light on and it ruins your sight for
mhm,
about 5 minutes.
yeah. But yeah, I like the darkness. It's pretty wild. And I mean, you spend 15 minutes in it and you start to be able to see pretty good. You
Yeah, it
just
was dark.
Yeah, but it was super dark, and then we didn't notice how much smoke there was. And my big concern wasn't so much the parts we went through, because whenever we realized it was on fire, you could tell like it wasn't going to reburn. The stuff we went through was completely burned, so I wasn't so concerned about the fire where we were. I was concerned about the fire like jumping the trail and us getting stuck
Yeah.
somewhere for a while between two fires. I was concerned about us getting into a spot where maybe we would be in the path of the fire crossing. So, I mean, it's kind of like a lot of things with hiking. You kind of, uh, and you kind of never know what you're going to get yourself into. I know you've mentioned this before, but you think you're going to go out for a walk. And this is why you don't just bring you know, one bottle of water,
Yeah.
out of the pack you keep in the garage. You take a full kit because things happen, and you don't always, like, as much as we're like, oh, be prepared and this and that and blah blah blah. It's like you don't always check the weather. Sometimes you're just kind of like grab your bag and get out the door, and you're like, oh well, they had a controlled burn today. It's like, well, I didn't look at the controlled burn reports. Um,
Yeah.
it just
Well,
happens.
and that happened to me at Guad. Like the hardest, like not this trip that we just had, but the one before that, the hardest day we were gonna have is like 16, 17 miles with like bazillions of feet of elevation gain. I forgot my hat. I forgot
Mhm.
my GPS. I forgot I mean, like I went through like 10 things that I forgot. And I made a video about it, and I was in such a funk. Like, because I'm always preaching and to new backpackers or hikers, like when I experience them, like, oh, be prepared for the unexpected, this, and like I don't know what it was, but I forgot everything.
Yeah, and I mean, I think with new people, it's definitely like in that sense, you're usually assuaging like anxiety and trying to get them pumped up to do it and not back out. Because it's better to just get on get on the horse and try it out. What with people who are a little more experienced or fall into a routine, the danger tends to be in complacency.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
in most things I've done, especially like the military, and then I was in the oil field and stuff. So there was always this saying of complacency kills, and it's also a thing with like rock climbing. Complacency is a thing where you jump on the wall without double checking. And like for instance, like when we rock climb, we enforce the habit of making sure we just do cursory checks before getting on the wall. Nothing crazy. It's just like are the basic things done that we need to do, and that's the thing I've kind of picked up personally throughout my life. I like to just do the cursory checks. So,
Yeah.
like when we were in that um, situation, it's like I knew we had the cursory checks. I knew I had enough stuff in my backpack to kind of last um, if something kind of went a little wonky, but I wasn't prepared to be on fire. So, so I kind of drew the line there a little bit, or started to draw a line. Kind of prepared to back out just in case it got super crazy. It didn't end up getting that crazy. Actually, later in the day, it was worse because when we
Yeah.
came back through it, it was like insanely smoky. And that was a problem. I was worried about that, and I think I was coughing for a couple of days, and I was miserable when we got to the smoke again.
Man.
30 miles was that hurt,
Yeah.
especially when you're a civilian.
So it was like 20 miles. I was good. I've done 20 miles. I've done them at Guadalupe Mountains. I was good with 20 miles. I hit 25, and then I was just like, man, this is starting to suck. And then when I think it was about 28, like I mentally just shut down, and it was just like I was just stepping and I wasn't paying attention. Like mentally, I was gone, and tripping over stuff, not being in tune with what's going on. And yeah, that was tough. And what really was horrible, there was two things horrible. You had to stop to get ice cream, and I'm trying to race back home because I told Lori I would take her out for dinner, and trying to like hurry up and get that hike done because we were gone like all day, and then race back to to have dinner. And
This is actually one of the you it kind of bent the truth a little bit whenever you said because you said I'll just like be like, oh yeah, I'm ready to go, or whatever. I'm going to do 30 miles. I'm like, yeah, okay. Because the truth is, I was like, yeah, okay, but you're getting me ice cream. That was the stipulation.
yes, and
Which,
then
by the way, you
you
did not get.
you didn't get ice cream.
I did get ice cream at the gas
Okay.
station across from my house. Which
you didn't
you
say,
mentioned.
you didn't say where you wanted to get ice cream.
Yeah, if you remember, you said the trail was about an hour from my house. So after 30 miles, you drove all the way while I was pointing out gas stations that you were passing until it was convenient to stop.
So here's a moment where we didn't communicate. So I told you I had to hurry up and get home to take Lori to dinner. So I thought, oh, okay, you'd be like, oh yeah, I don't worry about the ice cream. But as soon as we passed the first gas station, you're like, dude, why didn't you stop? I want ice cream. And I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah, I wanted ice cream.
And by that time, well, I didn't know that you were serious. So yeah, I'm like hauling down the freeway, passing all the exits, and you're just looking at me like, well, here's another gas station. And then it hit me like, you're serious? Like you really want to stop right now and get ice cream? So yeah, so I apologize. So I did get you ice cream.
Not only was it 30 miles, it was pretty warm that day, and we walked through the fire. So
yeah, so you should have had 2 stops of ice cream.
I earned ice cream.
And that was probably, and to make a really long story short, you got your ice cream. Mm-hmm. Maybe it wasn't in the timing that you expected
from my house.
Yeah, probably
myself.
You wouldn't get a walk that day after that hike. And I when I got home, of course I had my promise to Laura that we'd go out to dinner. So I can't walk at this moment. So I've been sitting in a car for an hour. We get home, all the lactic acid's built up. I'm like trashed. And so I make it inside. She's ready to go have dinner. And we go to the Woodlands. And I don't remember what restaurant. We went to that South African restaurant that you told us about. Mm-hmm. And there was no parking. So she had to park at the very top of the parking garage. So I had to walk down all these flights of stairs. It literally probably took me 30 minutes to get to the restaurant, and it's probably about a 5-minute walk, if that. And then when we were leaving, I made it to the door, and that was it. And I said, you're going to have to go grab the car and come pick me up. But yeah, so we nailed the 30-mile day, and I want to do a 40-mile day. So I'm not sure if you're down with that, but that's, and if you're not down, huh?
That's a long way.
And what I want to do, if you're not down, I was going to ask you if you could meet me at Trailhead 20 and walk back with me. So I'm going to walk from Trailhead 20, Trailhead 1 to mile 20. So it's at Stubblefield campsite. It's 20 miles. And then you hike back with me the remaining 20 miles in case something happens. So I haven't told you. Huh?
Or just to Trailhead 6. I can do that.
Yeah. So yeah, I haven't told you about that yet, but that's my next thing. All right. So now let's start getting into the exciting stuff. So these are let's hit Davis Mountain Preserve. And then after that, we'll go through all the Guadalupe Mountain fun stuff.
Go.
All right. So I had the bright idea for some reason to hike the 10 highest peaks in Texas. And for all you people that live in California or Colorado, or, yes, I know our mountains aren't like yours, but we do have a lot of mountains, over 10 that are over 8,000 feet. And some of these mountains are not connected by a trail. So, you would have to go off trail, navigate, all that kind of stuff. The Davis Mountain Preserves has Mount Livermore, or Baldy Peak, as they call it. So it is I think number 7 in the highest. I would have to double check, of the highest 10 in Texas. So I think at the point when I asked you if you wanted to go with me to bag it, I had that one still to do, and then the Blue Ridge Peaks, and then I was done. So, and I think this was a quick trip. Like, we drove there, we drove through the night, drove there, hiked it, and then didn't we just turn around and drive back?
Yeah.
Or yeah, like it was just, and this drive is what, 8-9 hours? It's
Yeah.
almost to Van Horn. It's like, I think, close to Fort Stockton, or maybe a little bit past Fort Stockton.
Yeah, I don't even think I took a day off work. I think we just did it in a weekend.
Yeah. And so, I didn't do a lot of research. I was just thinking, oh, okay, it's on a trail. It's not that big of a deal. We get there, and I think at first we were kind of lost because there was like 2 entrances. There was one we were waiting at, and then we found the actual entrance. And there was that group from Midland. The
Yep.
Midland hiking group was there. And so, we got to meet them and hike with that whole crew.
Yeah, I didn't realize you were so popular until that moment. That was kind of funny because that guy got out of the
Michael.
Yeah, he got out of the car in front of us and turned around and was like, "Is Jason in there?" And I was just so perplexed. It was weird.
Yeah,
but it was cool. They were cool. That was cool about that. I liked hiking with them.
Yeah, they were a lot of fun, and they for sure have a love of hiking and a love for each other. And I met, I think it was, so Theresa is the admin of the Midland Odessa hiking group Facebook page. So I think she was one of the creators of the page. And I remember when I posted my pictures about El Capitan, she reached out to me and wanted some information about, El Capitan, what's the best routes, and that sort of thing. And so I kind of gave her a map and how we did it, and like, oh, maybe you should think about this or think about that. And so, yeah, maybe, and I think they're about 4 or 5 hours away from all that, like the Guads. So they're there a lot. And they do a lot of hiking. So, as a listener, if you're out in that area and you want to connect with a cool group of people, certainly the Midland Odessa, I think it's Midland Odessa hiking group is a great group. There was one group from that group that I that I went with to find the B-24 plane crash and then Jose's grave. So yeah, I've hiked a lot, not a whole lot, but 2 or 3 trips with people from that group, and they're all love hiking, and not a one is not a wonderful person. So yeah, it was funny. So Mike, we're parked behind him. He gets out and goes, "Is Jason in here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's me." So we got to meet them and hike with them. I had no idea how beautiful that place was. That is the most, I think, out of all the stuff that we've done, that is the prettiest area in Texas that I've been to. And I'm sure you can argue there's a few other places, but that place was spectacular.
Yeah, if there was one place in Texas I'd like to get that some acreage, it would be there. Like,
yeah,
top. But
yeah. And so hiking up to Mount more Baldy Peak. Um, it wasn't bad, so I didn't know what to
I
expect,
thought
but
it was pretty mellow. It
yeah,
was
it
mostly a
was
trail up, a
mostly a
little
trail
spicy.
up. Yeah, at the very end, it was spicy, so it was probably what 30 or 40 feet that you had to actually probably uh
Three.
class 3 for a bit climbing. And what was funny is like Teresa, I think was freaking out about it, so you had to help her up. Like I don't remember, you were carrying her backpack up as she was going up, and then Mike was helping. And
There's
then
a
on the
few
way,
people that were having that were pretty nervous about it because it had some exposure.
oh,
Like,
absolutely.
yeah, and I'm fairly used to that. I'm fairly used to heights and stuff, so I didn't mind walking along those kind of ridge lines and stuff. But I could definitely tell, like when you pop up and all of a sudden you're looking over a 50-foot cliff, it was pretty sheer. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
uncomfortable.
and on the way down, I think I carried her backpack while you were helping them to come down. It was yeah,
I was
I
drinking the screwballs that Mike brought. Those
yeah,
were awesome.
that
That's
was
the first
awesome.
time I'd had it, and I
That
was pretty.
peanut butter flavor, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that was so if listeners, if you've never been out to Davis Mountain Preserves, man, you have to get out there. I think they've changed it a bit now, so it's a little more I don't believe you have to have reservations now, but I still think it's only open like 1 weekend a month. But yeah, I mean, you have to get out there. All right, so now let's jump into the Guadalupe Mountain adventures. And so I want to just kind of give you the adventure and just in one or two words. I did this with Sam. Kind of sum up what are the first couple of thoughts that come to your mind. Okay, so quad. And just real quickly, while you're thinking, the quad is you're bagging, I believe I would say the four highest peaks in Texas. So you have Guadalupe Peak, Guadalupe Peak is the highest, Bush Mountain, Shumard, and Bartlett. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. You hike up to Guadalupe Peak on a trail, and then from there it's all off trail. It's all navigation to Shumard, then to Bartlett, and then to Bush Mountain. So, so what Sam said it was the absolute. Sam is a PCT hiker. He was in episode, he was in episode 3. He's done, hard hikes. He's in New Mexico, so he's, elevation gains and all that. And then him and his brother has hiked most of the PCT and has done the Colorado Trail, and they both said it was the hardest hike that they've ever done.
Yeah, and in 2 words, I would say fun and difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking painful. Really, is probably the better way to say it.
For me, when I go back and think about it, and maybe because it was so horrible that my body and mind have blocked some of that, um, like hardest hike that I've ever done, like it doesn't dawn on me that that's it, but it has to be that hike was impossible, and you better have the right people with you. And so there was a topic that I wanted to talk about a little bit later, but and I don't want to get too much into detail, but like when you have these, for me, like when I've had these goals, I've attempted these goals a lot of times, and you have people, and you have, I don't know if it's expectations, but you like have an understanding that they're experienced or this or that, and then when you get out to the park, you realize like they're not in shape or they don't have the experience. And so there's been a lot of times, trying to do these kinds of things and knock off these challenges that I set for myself, that you just know you don't have the right group. And it's funny that I don't remember how many times I've had to cancel or just say, hey, guys, we got to turn back just because this could get dangerous. But meeting Sam and then meeting you, like I have the A team now. So like I'm just like, like, yeah, let's do this, and I don't have a worry. You're the navigator, the map person. Sam is very experienced as well. So like I think I'm the only one that would cause us to turn around. If I'm not in shape or something, because I know you guys are going to be on point, and whatever happens through all of us, we're going to have the right amount of experience to handle any kind of situations. But yeah, that hike was horribly hard. We left at probably 3:30 in the morning. We got up to Guadalupe Peak probably within about 2 hours, and it was still dark. And I remember when it got real for me, Sam and I had started to head to Shumard, and he's from Guadalupe Peak. He's dropping down, and he's like, I can't even see where my feet are stepping. And so then we're like, all right, everybody pull back. And then you and Max started kind of hiking back down the trail, and you guys, looking at the map, made the call that let's step off here, and we'll figure it out. But like all the way to Shumard, there was you and Max were way ahead of me and Sam, and there was always a possibility of us getting cliffed out. So I let y'all go, and if we got clipped out, then you guys would have to hike back, and I wouldn't have to.
All right, that's a legitimate tactic. Yeah, that was probably the hardest. Yeah, probably one of the hardest hikes since I was in the military,
Yeah,
kind of thing. Because that was one thing I really like you said. I like to navigate. I really like off trail stuff. I don't recommend it. It's a good way to get in a lot of trouble.
yeah,
Not just like because maybe they'll fine you if you don't get a permit or whatever, but no, I mean they'll you can get yourself in a world of hurt. One thing's like being cliffed out, understanding when to take gambles. That's the only kind of word for
yeah,
it. I mean, you don't like to say it that way, but you're gonna take a gamble that you might have no choice but get cliffed out. I know I've done stuff in Arkansas where we went up stuff that when we got done, we turned around. It was like, that's going to be really hard to go back down. We're going to try our luck over here, basically. So you kind of try to go for a high percentage thing. And then there was a couple times where I had to jump down some things that were like, man, getting back up, that's going to really suck. So, you're constantly, weighing like going forward versus going back, and then you're constantly trying to pick the optimal route for where you are, and then you have to like calculate in like how tired are we, how
yeah,
tired is the most tired person with us, stuff like that. So that's why I like it, quite frankly, is it that you have a lot of calculation you have to do. It's kind of fun to be in that kind of unknown,
yeah,
like where you're a little more concerned. Like following a trail is very fun. You've given me actually an appreciation for that. I wasn't really into trails until we started hiking, and then it was like, oh, these can be really fun, especially if you go like on these really challenging trails. Far. Use the fact that you can get on a trail to go 15 miles out, you know, into the wilderness. But I also like to go through it. And so the quad was very much that of like, and you mentioned we started off the peak. So this is a part of like the first calculation we made. It was like we went off the peak and started going down the easier route, or what would have ultimately led to having less overall elevation. But it was really dark, and the likelihood someone would slip and make a mistake that would get them, hurt. It was starting to creep up to kind of a uncomfortable level. And so we backed out of that and then used the fact that we could read the topology and all that in order to find a longer but safer route.
Yeah, you twist an ankle out there, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and it's little things. I mean, of course, devastating stuff happens. Like people fall off cliffs and die, and people get stuck on ledges for days. People go out there and get lost, but yeah, that's awful. But it also sucks if you just roll your ankle and you have to walk back 12 miles, and it's going to take you all day and night, and you're going to be cold, and you're going to be miserable, and you're going to go past the point of like this being extremely uncomfortable. You're going to have to navigate stuff that is hard to navigate in a condition like that.
And
so,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was about to say, I'm a big proponent of not having to have hiking boots in Texas unless you're at Big Bend or Guadalupe Mountains and you're off trail. You need a hiking boot.
Yeah,
I had trail runners, and that even added more danger because my foot was slipping to the side. Yeah, that was I was from Guadalupe Peak to Shumard was no big deal. From Shumard to Bartlett is where I really I was like, man, if Lori knew what I was doing right at this moment, she'd be so mad. And it was like we dropped down to basically it's the wash that Devil's Hall follows up, up through that way. And we're in this wash, and I'm like, let's just walk down the wash and just connect to this finger and just go up this finger because we can see it. We know it's a steady climb. It's not, not that big of a deal. And I got outvoted to no, let's go up this little hill and then just cut across. Well, that cut across was even in the 3D model in the Pine Springs Visitor Center, you can see that section is like, it's just like a little section of that traverse where it's just like way steeper than the other parts. And we went across that, and I don't know percentage of angle, but like you literally are walking and like I was having to grab onto bushes that were right to my side to not fall off this fall 400 or 500 feet. So yeah, I was pissed, and I was like, oh man, this sucks.
Yeah, I distinctly remember at that part thinking like, I don't want to fall for sure.
Oh, yeah. And I think, so Max had already like taken off. You were waiting for me. And then when Sam saw it, he just like, forget, I'm not doing that. So he just hiked straight up, and that was even more steep. And it was almost like class 3 all the way up. And, I think he even beat everybody up. But yeah, I should have just dropped down because I didn't feel comfortable. I should have just dropped down to the wash, walked to the finger, and then just walked up that way. But you did wait for me. So, in case I did fall. But yeah, that was sketch.
Yeah, I don't think so. In that part, it was more. I don't think it was going to be something where you fall and you like slide off the mountain kind of thing. You weren't going to go all 500 feet, but it was like if you fell there, you were going to end up in a bush, like upside down.
Yeah,
very. There was no way you were going to not have a bad time.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it was not a good thing.
I think you made a good point too, though. One thing with like the off trail and like doing the thing like a quad, you mentioned like, hey, this draw goes down to in Devil's Hall. It's a good thing to also always keep in mind like your macro environment.
Yeah,
like just have a general idea of like if everything gets boogered, like which way do I go? Like,
yeah,
do I just sit here or can I just walk like kind of east generally and hit a road?
Yeah, and that park is pretty nice about that. Like you never really I mean, we've been into some parts out there where you lose line of sight, but for the most part, there's big features, and you know these peaks, and you know how they are in relation to the park. So yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I that's why when I hear about people getting lost out there, like that one gentleman, I'd like to have him on the podcast.
Mhm.
You got to like, oh, I wonder how that happened, because it's, it can happen. And just like the quad, when we were talking to that ranger, they said a group of people got cliffed out and they had to go rescue them. And like they couldn't
Yep.
go up, they couldn't go back down, and they were in trouble.
Yeah,
And then
they got themselves in a bind for sure. And I mean, if you look at if you look back to what we were doing, I mean, a lot of that stuff was super steep. Like even going between the Guadalupe Peak and Schumard, like that, when we went down into that draw, there was quite a few times I was expecting to come out onto a cliff. We came out
we
perfectly.
lucked out. Yep.
Yeah, we nailed it.
And when
And
we're
for
on,
one thing to mention with that, it's like for a human, like you say, oh, get cliffed out, and you think like, oh, you come up to this dramatic 5,000-foot cliff. It's like, no, you can't. Like if it's a 12-foot cliff, you're gonna break your ankle getting down that. So it just takes a little bit of cliff that you
Yep.
walk down on, and you're like, wow, everything just got totally screwed for me. I don't know how to get down this.
And when we're on Tejas and we're looking back across the canyon to the quad, and you're seeing three of the peaks, because the Tejas runs into bush.
Yeah.
But you're looking at this, and I always think, how in the heck did we do that? Like even if I show someone a picture, it doesn't do it justice. It's almost like an insult to what we accomplished, because that's incredible.
Yeah, it's a really cool it was a really cool thing to do. Definitely one of the more nerve-wracking things, like you said, crossing that. You gotta, in order to do it, you're gonna take some gambles. You're gonna take some chances. So I definitely highly don't recommend it unless you absolutely know.
Unless you have Sam and Henning with you and
Yeah,
Max.
yeah, unless you can read a map and you know exactly what you're going to do and you know what those lines mean.
Yep.
Yeah, then I would not do it. But yeah, it was pretty cool. I would also highly recommend, if you ever go off trail there for anything, is gaiters.
Oh yeah,
So,
for sure.
Boots for sure, but also gaiters, because all the sticks around there in the desert, they just stab you in the shins the whole time.
Yep. Yeah,
They all grow knee high.
Yep. Yeah, we had some torn up pants for sure.
Mm.
So the next adventure that we had, and also like the quad, we left at 3:30 in the morning. We didn't get back till like it was dark, so it was about 8:30 at night. So it was a long day.
Very long day.
Yep.
I was glad I brought 2 giant salami sandwiches.
Yeah, and I didn't do the bush mountain part because I was like, forget that, I've already done bush. Y'all have fun. I'm just gonna sit on the trail and wait for you.
I think you went to sleep.
Yeah, I did. I was whacked. All right, so the next big adventure was going out to Mount Pratt. And with that, we've come to the end of part 1 of my episode with Henning. I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we have. And don't forget to tune into our next episode. We will continue discussing our hike out to Pratt and share many more hiking adventures. Until then, happy trails and safe travels. As always, thanks for listening.